You're watching NBA Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Chase Sr. Appreciate all of you for making today's show a part of your day. On the docket for today, NBA free agency grades. The peak of free agency, it's in the rear view. A couple of notable players left, but up to this point, fairly confident in what these grades are going to be for all 30 teams in the National Basketball Association. We're going to go alphabetical order here. We start off with the Atlanta Hawks, and really, they didn't make many monster moves in NBA free agency, but on the eve of free agency, they made that trade for DeJounte Murray, which I think makes the Hawks a really interesting basketball team. And in turn, it allows Atlanta to use Trae Young more off-ball in a Steph Curry way, which could unlock a different element to his game that we haven't seen before because he's been so ball-dominant with Atlanta out of necessity. Here are the trade details here. DeJounte Murray to Atlanta. Spurs received Danilo Gallinari. They waived him. He signed a 2-year deal with the Boston Celtics. 3 first-round picks included here, which does impact the Kevin Durant trade market to a certain degree, in addition to the Rudy Gobert trade between the T-Wolves and the Utah Jazz. Then that first-round pick swap in 2026. DeJounte Murray to Atlanta, a star-studded backcourt in Atlanta, and he's going to be able to be a primary ball handler. So too is Trae Young. They lost a couple of shooters, though, which is really weird, in Gallinari, and then they traded away Kevin Huerter. So while you get a really good player in DeJounte Murray, you lose some shooters around Trae Young as well as Murray, the latter of which not the best three-point shooter. To the Boston Celtics, I love what Brad Stevens has been able to do. It's one of the few A grades that I'm handing out in our free agency grades, and I love the trade of Malcolm Brogdon for the contract that they're paying him, the necessity and the need that they had on the roster, but also the player who Brogdon is when he's healthy. We're talking about an all-star caliber guard who is worth a pretty affordable price tag, and Marcus Smart, throughout the playoffs and throughout the regular season, had to handle the responsibilities of being the point guard, but that's not his natural position. Malcolm Brogdon is that guy. He can put the ball on the floor. He's a smart and heady player. He's good defensively, which adds to that Celtics defensive culture, but he can create shots for his teammates, and I think a byproduct of this trade, it's Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown getting a lot of open looks. Free agency moves for Boston. The value deal for Danilo Gallinari is fantastic. Another one of those snipers from deep. 2 years, 13 for him, 6.5 average annual value. That right there is an absolute steal. For the Brooklyn Nets, when we did our previous free agency grades, I think I gave him a D or an F, but that was because of Kevin Durant requesting a trade and Kyrie Irving most likely not being on this basketball team. But if those two players come back, I actually like what the Nets have done in free agency. A couple of really good depth and rotational pieces, but this is operating under the premise that KD and Kyrie actually come back. Patty Mills, he's a playoff level player. 2 years, 14.5 for a backup point guard. That's about the going rate. Nicholas Claxton, 2 years, 20. Kessler Edwards signed that 2-year deal. The TJ Warren contract, worth as little as it was, I thought was a great contract for Brooklyn because when he's right, and he hasn't because of foot injuries the last couple of years since the NBA bubble, he's a walking bucket. So we'll see what happens with KD and Kyrie. It's a C-ish grade right now. That can improve dramatically if KD and Kyrie go back. For the Charlotte Hornets, it's a C grade. What big moves have they made? Really nothing. Now, they addressed big in the NBA draft by going Mark Williams, and I think to pair him up alongside LaMelo, that's a good acquisition and a guy who LaMelo can build with. But you got shafted with Kenny Atkinson leaving, and really you have to keep in mind a lot of this conversation throughout this show is about what these teams have also done in the offseason. The notable move, Cody Martin, 4 years, 32. If we're talking free agency losers, it's Miles Bridges, who right before free agency got bopped for domestic violence, all-time buffoonery from him as he was set to make $25 to $30 million per year. Chicago Bulls, it's a B grade. If you remember last year, through a lot of the first portion of the regular season, they were the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. And I think they've done some solid things to address depth. Andre Drummond, 2 years, 6.5, one of the better backup centers in the league and one of the best rebounding bigs. Zach LaVine, they locked them up long-term. Derek Jones doesn't move the needle for me much, but gives you athleticism. And then for a backup point guard, Goran Dragic, he's been really in the guts of some big playoff games. Played in NBA Finals, international games as well. 1 year, less than $3 million for him. Now, I want to ask you this. Money moves. Who's made them? Which team has had the best free agency? Let me know. You can agree with me, disagree with me. Either way, chime in the comment section right now. Cleveland Cavaliers now. B grade for Cleveland. They really have a good young core developing. And we'll see what happens with Colin Sexton. According to the Cleveland Plain Dealer, Sexton wants to return. Cleveland wants him back. Cavaliers didn't need to do much. Now, the big splash, Darius Garland receiving that rookie max contract, 5 years, $193. It can become about $230 plus over time if he reaches some incentives. Ricky Rubio was playing a high level of basketball before he tore his ACL for the second time in his career. $6+ million for him as a backup point guard. Again, that's about the going rate. As for the Dallas Mavericks, I'm going to give them a B grade. That might be higher than what people have given them in their own grading segments, but I'm running the show, and I'm giving them a B grade. Now, you lose out on Jalen Brunson. That is a monster loss. That cannot be understated, and they still have to fulfill that role for JB going to the New York Knicks. Is it going to be a sign-and trade? Do they get assets back? There's been some chatter on that front. So losing Brunson, it's a huge dent into the armor for Dallas, a team that Brunson was the second best player for en route to the Western Conference Finals. First time they won a playoff series since 2011. I like the signing of JaVale McGee. They needed rim protection and a rim runner. He certainly gives them that. Denver Nuggets, they've bulked up their depth, and they're going to get Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. back, and they're going to be an interesting team this upcoming year in the Western Conference. B- for them. The Joker signs a record deal, largest contract in the history of the NBA, which will be overtaken within the next year because the salary cap will continue to go up. 5 years, $270 million. And the celebration that we saw in Serbia, it was awesome. It rivaled our Chat Sports Kai Soto dance. DeAndre Jordan didn't make sense to me. I think he's washed. Bruce Brown, 2 years, 13. Very good glue guy for a playoff team that certainly needs them. They also made that trade with the Washington Wizards. That is notable as well. Detroit Pistons, B+. Now, this is a combination of really what they've done primarily in the NBA draft, but also some moves in free agency. You draft Jaden Ivey, who I think is going to be Ja Morant light, and then you get your big and Jalen Duren and a couple of other really good players on that team. I like the core that they're building. Marvin Bagley has a new lease on life. He inked a 3-year, $37 million contract with Detroit. It's a really good story for a guy who has been overshadowed by being in the same draft class as Trae Young, DeAndre Ayton, as well as Luka Doncic. But down the stretch after getting sent to Detroit, played pretty good basketball. Kevin Knox, we'll see if he can figure it out. Golden State Warriors, B grade for the reigning NBA champions, primarily because of the value deals that they have gotten done. Kevon Looney coming back, 3 years, $25.5 million, and Dante DiVincenzo, 2 years, $9.3. The third year for Looney is a player option. The second year for Dante DiVincenzo, also a player option. For Looney, a big who always finds himself in the right spot at the right time, has won 3 championships with this team. Not sure what the health is going to be for James Wiseman. Really important to have him on the roster. For DiVincenzo, former first-round pick who fulfills Gary Payton II leaving. He can be a very good wing defender, excellent athlete, and shoot the 3 ball. I think he is going to really break out in that Warriors system. Now, today's show presented to you by Rumble. That's where you can also find our NBA content here at Chat Sports. 3 channels to be exact. NBA Now, more than 3,000 subs. Warriors Today, more than 3,200. And then the Lakers Report, 2,500 subs. If you want more exclusive content on Rumble, just plug in that link down below, rumble.com/NBA Now. And when you go there, the same color as that graphic right below me, you hit that follow button. Free and uncensored content, sports, news, politics, tech, and business. We continue to grow to the platforms that you as the homies use, so give us a follow on Rumble today. We move forward in our free agency grades. Houston Rockets, B grade. Look, I like what they've done over the last couple of drafts. They are building around Jalen Green, and I think that Jabari Smith is going to be a good player down the road. Some flashes in the summer league of him being an Evan Mobley type with a better three-point shot in free agency. The big move for them, Jayshawn Tate, as they continue to bulk up and compile young assets on that team. And I think they're going to be one of these NBA League Pass teams that are going to be must-watch television when they either play your squad or you're just bored at night trying to watch them hoop. They have a really good young roster, and Josh Christopher, he's been hooping throughout NBA Summer League. To the Indiana Pacers, C grade. There's been some chatter that they might make a move for DeAndre Ayton, And if that's the case, this grade will improve depending on what the contract details are. They traded away Malcolm Brogdon, though, basically for nothing. They did re-sign Jalen Smith, former lottery pick out of Maryland, got off to a slow start with the Phoenix Suns, 2-year deal. I like him. Sometimes I like him better than most. I think he's a better backup big than he is a starter. Obviously, again, if they bring in DeAndre Ayton, that certainly changes things. For the Los Angeles Clippers, B grade. And going into 2022-2023, they're going to be a championship favorite for me if Kawhi Leonard is able to stay healthy. And if that team is healthy, they're going to be a problem in the Western Conference. They have depth, they have star power, they have versatility. John Wall, I know that he's made a ton of money throughout his career, and he's a former number 1 pick, and $47 million to not play a game last year, all-time business move for him, but $6+ million for him over 2 years for a guy who I think can still play. That's good. Nicholas Batum, a stretch 4 who can also play the 5 and knock down the 3 ball. Pretty good value there, $11 million average annual value. Ty Lue, also one of the best coaches in the NBA. Lakers. It's a C grade. It's been so average, it's not even funny. And I don't really have a lot of thoughts on what the Lakers have been able to do because they've made a bunch of mundane average moves. Part of that, they're cap strapped. They don't have a lot of money, paying max deals to LeBron, Russ, and AD. Damian Jones, good backup center, coming off a career best year. I think there's a better player in there for Lonnie Walker. 6.5 mid-level exception deal. If he can fulfill the expectations of being a former first-round pick, that could be a good value signing. Troy Brown Jr., we'll see if he cracks the roster. Juan Toscano Anderson. And then they brought in Thomas Bryant, too. And this is a guy, when healthy, is a pretty solid player who can give you 13 and 8 and a little bit of a 3 ball. But injuries for him have been a little bit of a concern over the last couple of years. As of now, it's Bryant and Damian Jones competing for that 5 spot. But there's a big move potentially looming for Los Angeles, and again, that would change one of these grades. Will the Lakers trade for Kyrie Irving? Give me a Y for yes or an N for no. To another one of the best young upstart teams in the NBA, Memphis Grizzlies, B grade. So they continue to also build their young core a season after they really establish a lot of momentum. Ja Morant, another one of the players getting one of those rookie max contract extensions, 5 years, $193. John Conchar, 3 years, $19 for that guard spot. Then Tyus Jones now becomes the highest paid backup point guard in the league, top 25 at his position, 2 years, $30. That's Ja Morant insurance. Plays a little bit of a reckless style, missed a lot of games last year. When he did go down, Tyus Jones rose up to the occasion and played very well. Miami Heat, going to give them a B, and they could trade for Kevin Durant, which would probably make it an A because they would become favorites, or at least one of the favorites, to win the Eastern Conference Finals. So in free agency, Victor Oladipo, Dwayne Dedmon, Caleb Martin, those are the deals that they have made official up to this point. They haven't made any big deals because Kevin Durant is waiting in the wings potentially. According to reports, it's the Miami Heat, it's the Phoenix Suns as two of the top destinations for one of the best players that we've ever seen in KD. Milwaukee Bucks, another one of the few A grades. If they had Chris Middleton last year, did they beat the Boston Celtics in that second round, which went 7 games? And if it wasn't for Grant Williams going off in Game 7 at TD Garden, does Boston advance? Milwaukee's a really good basketball team with the best player on earth in Giannis, and they brought back and retained a lot of players who helped them win a championship 2 years ago, and players who add to their identity. And then the Joe Ingles acquisition is the external move that they made. He's coming off that torn ACL. He's about a 40% three-point shooter, especially when he's getting open looks. He could be an excellent and under-the-radar addition for Milwaukee. Then Serge Ibaka will be a backup big once again after he was traded for by Milwaukee at the NBA trade deadline, but barely played throughout the NBA playoffs. Minnesota Timberwolves, B-. I've changed my thoughts basically every single day. I have no idea what to make of the Rudy Gobert trade. I don't really like it because you're paying 2 bigs in an era of the NBA where the game is played primarily through, offensively, wings and guards, and you're paying 2 bigs more than $70 million. And at the end of the game, in the playoffs, down the stretch, are you paying and playing both Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns to potentially not play together? That's a little bit of a problem for me, and he gave up a lot of pick compensation. We'll see, though. It's a fascinating experiment. New Orleans Pelicans, B grade. Another one of these teams in the West, man, I cannot wait to watch. And the depth of talent at the NBA level is as good as it's been in a really long time. Now, free agency grades didn't really do much. Zion Williamson, he's so big he gets to appear twice on this graphic. 5-year, $193. Deal can be up to $231 million. In all seriousness, though, Zion looks good. I'm rooting for him to stay healthy because 2 years ago, when he was healthy, shot about 60% from the floor, 20-plus points per game, 10 rebounds, couple blocked shots per night, and some highlight reel-worthy dunks. Zion on that Pelicans roster, with all the pieces they've been able to really add up, they can be a really good team in the West, coming off a year in which they pushed the Phoenix Suns to 6 games in round 1 without Zion. New York Knicks, they finally got who they think is a star in Jalen Brunson. And honestly, we don't know the contract details right now because we're not sure if it's going to be a sign-in trade, if it's going to be a free agent acquisition. Let's say it's $104 million, which pays Brunson about, $26, $30 million per year, puts him top 25 among all point guards. If you stack him up on this deal, let's say it is that, 4 years, 104, it's actually a pretty good deal, in my opinion, for a guy who over time can give you 20 points per game and 8 boards. Isaiah Hartenstein, he's really improved over the last couple of years, and then he's going to pair up in that front court with Mitchell Robinson, 2 different players at that center and forward spot. If you love the NBA, Chat Sports is the place for you. Not only do we want you to subscribe by hitting that red sub button down below, turn on those notifications. Therefore, anytime we go live, and we've been live pretty much every single day of free agency, or anytime we push out a video, you will be notified. Oklahoma City Thunder, B. They get Chet Holmgren in the draft. I think that he is going to be a very good fit for what they want to do. And then in free agency, they add to the young core Lou Dort. He got that big contract. He continues to ascend. Mike Muscala, he's a big who can stretch the floor. Orlando Magic, they get Paolo Banchero, who up to this point throughout the Summer League has looked like the best player in this draft class. And then free agency, Mo Bamba, Gary Harris, Bol. Gary Harris, yes, $13 million is a lot, but previously he was getting 20, and he's a veteran who can score off the bench, and then Mo Bamba had a career best year. I think he's going to continue to improve. Philadelphia 76ers, PJ Tucker, more than $10 million over 3 years. That third year is a player option, which is important. James Harden took a $15 million pay cut to return to Philly. That's really big, and that second year is also a player option. Daniel House is a good defending wing who's a good athlete who can throw down some hammers and play some defense. I think the Sixers have more depth, more toughness, and are a better team than they ended last year being. Phoenix Suns, C+. They've barely done nothing. They've been so silent, and they don't need to make a lot of improvements. The DeAndre Ayton domino has to fall, but they extend Devin Booker on that Supermax deal. Damian Lee, Bismack Biyombo, Josh Okogie. Those are players who are going to be battling for roster spots for a team that, let's be fair, is going to contend to win the West next year. Portland Trailblazers, B+. I floated between an A grade and a B+ grade. When you have Damian Lillard on your team, the offense is going to run through him. But defensively, he's a sieve. That's why you have to focus in and hone in on very good defensive wings to make up for what Dame lacks on the defensive end. One of the best offensive players of all time, not a great defensive player. So what they did in free agency, Gary Payton II led the NBA in steals per 36 minutes, $9+ million for him. I think he's only going to continue to round into form. Nurkic, that's a lot of money for him. He's been injured a lot. They traded for Jeremy Grant, who bulks up that defense as well. Really like what Portland has been able to do this offseason. Sacramento Kings, B. At the time, I was like, you didn't take Jaden Ivey, and you went with Keegan Murray. I love Keegan Murray, the player. But in the NBA Summer League, he's been the best guy. I would have went with Ivy. Maybe I'll be wrong. Love what the Kings have been able to do. They prioritize shooting as well. Malik Monk acquisition, Kevin Huerter via trade. San Antonio Spurs. Are they tanking for Victor Wembanyama out of France? The big who outplayed Chet Holmgren in the 2021 World Championships. Maybe. They traded away DeJounte Murray, and it looks as though they're resetting. You trade away their best player, they're going to be a bad basketball team this year. And how much does Greg Popovich have left? Toronto Raptors, C grade. I love the Raptors as an organization. I trust Nick Nurse. He's one of my favorite coaches in the league. Masai Ujiri might be the best GM walking the earth today. But Chris Boucher, fully guaranteed for $35 million, that's a lot. Thad Young, $16 million, $8 per year, that's a lot as well. Otto Porter Jr., I do like that acquisition. Utah Jazz, C. They traded away Rudy Gobert, Quinn Snyder left, and other than that, they haven't done much in free agency. We'll see what happens on the Donovan Mitchell trade front. Washington Wizards, B-. Around Bradley Beal, they've added some guard play and guys who can score. Hopefully Corey Kispert can continue to improve as an outside shooter. Johnny Davis, some red flags there. Worry about the athleticism throughout Summer League, but here's what they've done in addition to those trades, or that trade that they made with the Denver Nuggets. Beal, 5-year, $251 million max. He has a no-trade clause. One of the only players in the history of the NBA to have that. Anthony Gill, DeLon Wright, Taj Gibson just signed on Sunday officially after he was let go by the New York Knicks. Now, I want you to get into the comments section here. I want you to shout out your favorite squad, but also grade their moves. A, B, C, D, or F. Think about it. Think about what your squad has done. Put those grades together. Took me a lot of time to put this show together. I want you to do the same and put some thought into your comments.